Okay. Welcome to another fine episode of Command Control Power. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing just fine and dandy. How are you?
Good, man. Good. I'm just back from a vacation, back from the ACES
Nice.
conference. So yeah, feeling recharged.
What do we talk about first? The conference or your vacation? I don't know. I mean, you were on a rooftop in Spain, of course.
Yeah. I did not have to do any real support, other than just like some email, just basic, admin type stuff, managing the incoming, whatnot. So yeah, pretty fun vacation. It was great to actually. I was in London for a couple days. I saw my sister there. She has a 2-year-old son, so my little nephew got to spend some quality time with him and my sister and her husband. So they took us to like the East London Flower Market, which is like just a street that's all uh, tons of people just hanging out in the street, like in theory, shopping for flowers and plants and things, but also just shopping in general, getting a coffee, people watching. So that was pretty fun. And then we did the traditional Sunday roast as well. That was also really fun and delicious. And yeah,
Hmm.
then we went
Sunday
over to
roast.
Spain. So just yeah, got to do a little mini tour of a couple of countries there.
Wait, tell me more about the Sunday roast.
Well, I mean, it's a traditional thing on Sundays in the UK, I guess, and or I don't know, in London is where I've had it. And I can't really, I'm not such a foodie that I can describe things about it, but it's like, it's basically like some kind of cut of meat of some sort. Although we had Ashley and I had the fish option,
Hmm.
and a bunch of trimmings. It's like you've got well, the way that they roast the garlic is amazing. It's like half of a sort of like bulb of garlic just roasted to the point where you can like squeeze the bulb and like the
Oh
garlic just
yeah,
comes out as like paste. It's just delicious. You just put that on everything and
nice.
excellent potatoes and other veggies and stuffing and oh, and a thing called uh oh man, is it Yorkshire pudding? Have you ever had that?
No.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with like what my concept of pudding is. It's
Yeah, I'm always
just it's
weary
like a
about pudding, but go ahead.
yeah, no, totally. Well, except this has nothing. I mean, it doesn't look anything like pudding. So this to me is like a new thing that's also in the category of pudding. It's more like a puff pastry or something. So it's kind of
Oh,
like a pastry type thing. You just can dip in everything, and yeah, it was also tasty.
I
You
just
had
looked it
that?
up. Yeah, they look familiar. It's similar to these pastries that they have in Portugal that are there, but it's like a custard
Hmm.
almost. But
Yeah, I think it's more like a yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't know why they call it pudding, but that's just I mean, we have a lot of funny words for things too, I guess. So,
yeah,
um
maybe
so
pudding's
Jerry, have
wrong
you
how we describe it. Who
yeah,
knows?
maybe our pudding is I'm thinking of like Jello pudding, the little cups. Like
Yeah,
it's that's what I think of pudding. Jerry, have you ever had Yorkshire pudding in all of your travels overseas?
I have not. I've had somebody actually want me to try spotted dick, but I passed on that.
I have no idea
I'm
what that
gonna
is, but yeah,
yeah.
it
Yeah,
sounds like,
it's a
better safe than sorry.
Scottish. Yeah, Scott. Actually it's a British delicacy as well.
Nice. Well, I just
Look it
like how
up.
they have chips with everything. It's like fish and chips and like, whatever, a chicken sandwich with chips, which is fries, French fries. I don't know why they
Yeah,
call
I
them
love
chips.
French
So
fries.
yeah. Yeah, me too. Me too. Big fan. So yeah, that was London, and then we jetted over to Spain and saw some friends we know I've been visiting Sevilla. This is the original story of a rooftop in Spain. Before I had Tim, before I had a team of people and backup coverage, it was just me at all hours because the time shift is pretty significant, like 6 hours from U.S. East Coast, I guess. And so, yeah, when the demand was there, I was trying to balance, having fun with friends and answering client calls. And this trip, luckily, was I didn't have to do that, so it was nice to be able to just enjoy the company of our friends there in Sevilla or Seville, as we pronounce it.
Hmm.
And then yeah, we had like a 3-day party in a national park there, right outside of Sevilla, which was everything you might think of it, like a guy like me who goes to Burning Man, the type of parties that my friends throw. So it's kind of like a mini, 0.0001%, like version of Burning Man. So electronic dance music, but also like rock music and people that are just playing together as amateurs and a couple of professionals mixed in there, covering songs, playing originals, and a bunch of conversations. We talked about AI and geopolitics and all kinds of stuff sprinkled throughout the day. And, there's a pool, and it's in this beautiful setting. So very, very restorative, recharging kind of trip. A lot of fun, and good to be back also.
That's great.
Lots of recreational drugs, folks.
No comment. Yeah.
A lot of highbrow conversations with all you smarty pants there with AI and politics and everything.
It was really interesting. Like these are like my pet topics. I bring them up to whoever will listen, sometimes to our audience, whether they like it or not, and it was amazing how many people were also on the same page who brought up the topics to me or who were like right there with me, kind of, having these deep conversations. It's kind of one of the main benefits to me. It's just a great community that I'm part of there, and a lot of people are interested in that in addition to the partying and whatever other fun they like to have. It's also the fun is the conversation also.
Yeah. I'm sure the other parts of the fun help the conversation too. So that's good.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. Kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Sam, I see that Joe's wearing a Michael Thompson t-shirt. Is mine on the way in the mail as we speak?
It is sitting about 3 feet from me right now in a plastic bag that I have not sent.
This is the Origin 84 special shirt. Uptime.
I love it.
A good time. Yeah, it's a very, very cool shirt. Yeah.
I see the back.
Can you see the back there?
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, very retro, like this since 1984. Sam, I'd love to have a t-shirt like that. What do you think?
One day it'll come your way by horse and buggy, I think.
Yeah. I won't hold my breath.
But somehow Michael thought I was a large. I sleep in it now at night. I'm just kidding. No, I'll get you yours, Jerry. I promise.
Well, I'm so ripped. I take a large. I'm pretty jacked.
You have been working out. You got that rowing machine and everything.
Digging mulch in the yard and stuff. I imagine.
And what's that coffee mug you got there, Joe?
Just a coffee mug. Well, it's here. It's for anyone who wants to look this up. This organization has been around for 20 something years. I've been a supporter for many years. Going back to the conversation, one of you brought up recreational substances, medicines, and this. I swear this isn't product placement, but this is a organization that like an early version of sort of harm reduction, like before information was really out there about what is this thing I'm taking, what's in this, they provided a lot of information, what they call trip reports, people's experiences, imbibing various substances, the correct dosage, the correct protocols in terms of like set and setting and whatnot. So Arrowwood.org. Wow, this is quite a focus of this show here. I mentioned electronic dance music, and it just devolves into this conversation of I don't know, everybody's fantasy of like psychedelic use. Yeah.
You come ready, Joe. You got a nice outfit on. You got a cup on. Good cup going there. It's good.
Yeah. Who knows what's in this? This could be coca tea. I don't know. Just green tea. But yeah. So anyway, how did you guys miss me? How did you get along without me over the last 10 days vacation, and prior to that, a few days of ACES conference?
I think I don't reply fast enough to Jerry's text. That's what we all learned. That's right. We need you around to do that, Joe.
Yep, I'm a good buffer, I guess. Yeah. So.
Yeah, for our listenership, there's actually been no interruption in our shows. We, if we do have other commitments, we do our regular scheduling. And as we mention every week, just about if you do hear a best of show, it doesn't mean that we didn't broadcast a show that week. It just means that show is going out to Patreon. So if you can't get enough of this lively dialogue, and you're not a subscriber, you could subscribe to Patreon and hear everything.
That's right. Yeah, sign up, give it a try for a month even, just listen to a few episodes. If you like the behind the scenes content that we provide there, keep sponsoring, keep supporting us, because it really does encourage us to keep going with that. And you also get the access to this live stream. So any mistakes we make, any conversations we have that we later take out of the actual broadcast, like maybe some of the conversation earlier about the party I just attended,
Spotted dick.
Jerry's irreverent commentary. Exactly. You'll get the full throttle show there. So we invite you to join us on Patreon. Visit commandcontrolpower.com and click on support. So Jerry, what's new in your world, since you've had the kind of normal continuity the last couple of weeks, whereas Sam and I traveled to Aces and then I was gone for 10 days. How's your world there?
Oh, I've got a whole laundry list of things. The only thing that occurred to me as I was sort of reviewing the topics for the show was how visceral and how immediate and how in the moment you are when these things are happening to you. And then you look at them like a week or two later and you're like, it wasn't that bad. But it was really bad when you were in it. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So spotted dick, by the way, is I had to look it up because I forgot. It's a British steamed pudding made with suet, vegetable fat, flour, sugar, and dried fruits, which gives it a spotted appearance. And then the term dick is an Old English dialect word for pudding, similar to duff.
Another pudding.
Look at that. The pudding. Yeah, that's what it reminded me. I knew it was a pudding, but I just couldn't
you gotta say it like pudding.
I could put my fingers on it.
Pudding on the ribs.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, good one. I like that. Sam coming up with a quickie. So yeah, I got a whole bunch of things, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. So maybe we'll just go around the horn. I don't know if you guys want me to kick it off. I could kick it off.
Yeah, kick us off. Kick us off.
Well, the most recent harangue that represented about 10 hours of work was that'll be towards the end of the story.
All right.
You can.
Sorry, I jumped the gun. Sorry.
Yeah, I had this labeled QuickBooks, a user disaster. That's the topic here. But I've been working with a client recently. I might have mentioned it on the show, where they have brought in a QuickBooks server, because we have had clients in the past that virtualize Windows environment and run QuickBooks, and they're a manufacturing, a contracting business. But we have this existing client and they've been using QuickBooks on the PC for a long time. And they had a recent changing of the guard of people who organize their company. So the person who was the finance person who never wanted to share QuickBooks data left the company. And so the owner of the company decided, well, let's try to go into shared user mode. So we set them up with a headless Lenovo PC. And for the most part, that's worked out okay. There's always those trials and tribulations of onboarding PCs. Obviously, there's all this nuance to getting them to network on a local area network. There's all these layered settings. Sam, you can probably attest to this. Having to turn, there's the basics, obviously turning on network discovery, and all these things that are kind of like turned off by default, which is kind of like a good thing for the PC. But then if you just want a client machine to find the QuickBooks server, which is hosted on the network, sometimes you have to jump through hoops and climb ladders. So we had onboarded a couple of PC workstations, and those worked out fine. They had their, again, had to jump through hoops of fire to get them to connect. But I was trying to follow Joe's playbook and try to document as much as I could. So I was pretty sure, I could make these two computers communicate. So I go onto the QuickBooks server and I create a user. And by the time I got the PC onboarded, I was working from home at that point. So I VPN'd into the network. And even though it would be very slow to do a shared connection to the PC server via VPN, I just wanted to make sure that it accepted the credentials. And for some reason, it couldn't find the PC server over the VPN. And that was just another, thing that I just didn't want to get into. So I said, I'll just put it off till I'm there on site. So I show up on site on a Sunday because I had work scheduled for Monday, and the owner let me in. He's got a code to let me in the door, turned off the alarm, and I went in, and immediately the PC found the network, which was great. And I put in the logged user, the username that I created, and the password, and it was telling me that either the password or the user was incorrect. So, there's these authentication things you need to do. Sometimes you have to register with Intuit. The user gets an email invite. You have to accept the invite. So I wiped out that user, scorched earth, created everything all over again, went through different password criteria, the symbol, the capitalization, minimum of 8 characters, all those things. Nothing was working. It just, kept on rejecting. So, what I thought was going to be a quick drop off of the computer at the client site on Sunday morning, I ended up spending a couple hours there. Oof. And we had a beautiful day here in New England on Sunday. So that was kind of a little bit of a wreck to the morning. And I left, and I basically texted the client and I said, look, we're going to need to get QuickBooks Intuit on the phone to help us out with this. So we get this first tier Intuit guy, and he's having me, go through all the basics things that you would think for troubleshooting. He's following his laminated pages, and I'm just getting wound up here. And I didn't lose it, but I told him a couple of times, let's upgrade this call, because you're just going through your steps. And he would put me on hold, and he would either Slack somebody or talk to communicate via text to somebody else in another probably part of the world. And we were just getting absolutely nowhere. And I asked him to escalate the call 2 times. Finally, the second time he did it. And all this time now, I'm getting really, I'm trying to keep it cool. The client's there, the new employee's there that has to log into the QuickBooks server, and I'm kind of like shaking my fist at QuickBooks, the cloud, almost the cloud. I should put that background on. And ultimately, we're going through all these things, and they wanted me to create, to try to log into a sample file, because they have we've had an ongoing accounting file through QuickBooks, and they were thinking, well, there's corruption in the account. And so we had to rebuild the data and all this stuff. I mean, just all this stuff, hours and hours and hours. And again, the problem was the other clients could log in, right? Which was really weird to me. Other people in the network, in the building, could log into that QuickBooks server. I create a new user, it's rejecting it. And if you know anything about setting up QuickBooks on the server, and I'm sorry to go a little bit longer than I want to on this story, is there's an expected place for this file to live, right? It's in a shared folder, company data, I believe. And so on the workstation machine, that's where I was navigating to. I'd open the file, I'd try to put in the user login, and it was being rejected. But that was the tip. And if you guys ever use QuickBooks, when you see the ultimate path of what you're logging into on like the host machine or another client machine, you really can't see the full path. All I knew was that I knew where the server data was. The other machines were logging into it. But somehow, like after hours, I look at the host machine, and the host machine is not referencing the data that's in my company. The host machine is pulling a file from a temporary folder. And then I look at all the client machines that were logged into it, and they're referencing not where it's supposed to be, but they're all going to this temporary folder as well. So what happened behind the scenes was months ago, and these are people, I don't know if there's a moral to the story, but these are people who are, for the most part, maybe this should be a Patreon show, basic computer users. And if they do have experience, for the most part, most of them have experience in Mac. So we're kind of like leading them by the hand just to use this PC version. But somehow, through their working with the PC Pro or the QuickBooks program and not having enough experience, they somehow corrupted their data and had to pull in data from a backup. And they must
Oh,
have
wow.
gotten guidance online from Intuit. And what Intuit didn't follow through with them was to take the recovered file and move it to the expected location, which would be the shared folder, my company documents or company files. And then everybody referenced that. So they were just like, they were all like talking to an iteration of the file that wasn't where it was supposed to be. So me on the new workstation that I was going to sign into, I was going to the file that was sitting there because I knew that was the file, and it had the, you know, a date like yesterday or something like that, which was, I thought was kind of weird. So that was the problem, was that I was opening up the file that no one else was talking to and that the server wasn't even talking to. Because I was going to the expected spot where it should be.
I've seen
Did I
this too
explain
many
that
times.
quite well?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
So the server, was the server hosting like essentially both copies of the file, like the one that they had
just only
restored from
one.
back? Okay. So then how? And then that's the one that they were all connecting to, which
in a
was the
temporary
incorrect
folder.
one. Okay.
Yeah, in a yeah, exactly.
And then you were opening something else locally, and that
No,
was
not
not
locally.
the file.
No, I was opening up.
How were you opening it then if the server wasn't hosting it?
Well, that's interesting too. So you evidently, you know, QuickBooks or Intuit, the program itself isn't savvy enough to give me a message like saying, "Hey, buddy, you're trying to open up a file that's not even being hosted in multi-user mode."
Okay. Yeah.
It was just saying username or password was incorrect because it didn't recognize it because it was associating the new username and password that I created on the server. But the server was talking to the exactly. And the only thing temporary about it is what the folder it was sitting in. They had been using this for weeks now in the wrong location.
Wow.
So once that was all discovered, I pulled everybody out. I renamed the file to like master file. Like I wanted to call it like use this file. Don't use any other file or something like that.
Been there.
I moved it into the correct location where it should be, and then made sure that all the workstations were opening up that file. Yeah. Nice. But it took hours. And just to find it. And I was, this whole time I was angry at Intuit and saying like, what a piece of junk program it is that, you know, I'm creating a user. It's not even recognizing it. Like what's going on? And the whole time, you know, that's the thing, you know, sometimes you get into these client situations and you have to reverse engineer what's going on. But some of the things that you really expect to be obvious, like why would the server not be hosting any other file than where the file is supposed to be?
Right.
Yeah. Like I'm not going through nested folders in the Intuit folders on the server trying to find the right one. The right one is in the company files folder. That's where it's supposed to be. Right.
And did you say you went in on a weekend for this?
I spent a couple of, I spent time on the weekend just trying to log in, trying to sort out that login problem.
Gotcha.
And this was not discovered until like I got there at around Intuit support opened up around 9 o'clock Eastern time. And it took us it took me 4 hours to find it. And the guy on the phone, once I got escalated to a supervisor, you know, he was a little bit better and not necessarily working off of laminated pages. He had more experience, but even he couldn't see this. And we were doing screen shares. So, you know, should you say shame on them that they should have said, well, wait a minute, let's make sure that we're both the client machine and the server machine are looking at the same file. Maybe earlier in the game, he should have done that.
Yeah, don't assume too much right off the bat. Like look at the basics and kind of do that. Right.
Yeah. So apologies to our listeners if my story sounded a little convoluted, but
no, we've all been there with QuickBooks, especially. I feel like, you know, Sam said, you know, I'm not sure how you just phrased it, but the same thing I wanted to say, check your assumptions. You know, it's like, okay, what am I assuming going into this? I'm assuming it's this file, it's on the server, it's hosted, it's in this location. Is it in this location? Okay, is that what I'm opening from here? I mean, it's easy to suggest that now that you gave us the clue and the answer, but you know, it reminds me, going back to this party, there were not only were there a very high percentage of doctors at this party, which I thought was really interesting, but a lot of people in tech as well. So we had some conversations about, I was talking to these two software engineers, and we got on the topic of all the things we've learned, like the three of us have learned, doing this for 20, 30 years, whatever it is, where we see this kind of thing in the, what was it, Jerry?
Zero.
20?
Zero. I've learned nothing.
You've learned nothing. Yeah. Well, what I feel like I've seen over and over, whether I've learned anything from it or not, is the human computer interface. Like we're always at that front line, watching how real people in the real world interact with real software. And we see how they get themselves into trouble, and we see what they assume and how they read a message, and they don't read a message, or how they interpret the message and what that leads to. And, I'm not claiming to be like, a master like UX designer or whatever. Like I could do better than the people that, studied this and have been doing it for years. But I do feel like I have a sense of like where the software engineer and the like user experience designer like think that they're setting up the user for success. And in the real world, oftentimes those users have a lot of trouble, and like, I mean, blame QuickBooks for this one. Let's say blame Intuit. I'm not sure they could have done it much better, but maybe there's something they could do, because it sure seems like this is a recurring issue. Like not only, QuickBooks for Windows multi-user mode, but just straight up QuickBooks on the Mac. This happens all the time.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Because the nature of the design, whether you're working in QuickBooks or Quicken, is that every time you open it, it doesn't, you could set it up where it doesn't ask you what file you want to open. It just automatically assumes that it's the last iteration of the file or the last version of the file you were working on. And they designed it that way to avoid users opening up multi versions of it and getting confused and not knowing which one has the most up-to-date information. So every time I would reboot the server, I was never navigating through the path of, that's the file we need to open. It would just open it up. Right. Yeah. And the client machines that were already working were doing the same. And the only other thing I can say is, in my defense, is that if you try to look at the path of where that file is hosted, there's no way you can't right click on it. You can't say copy path. You can't display it. There's no way with the interface open to say, where is the file that I'm looking at? What is the path to that file?
It's kind of by design also, to your point. It's like QuickBooks is trying to help the user. Okay, you opened QuickBooks. I'm just going to resume what you were doing when you closed QuickBooks. You opened this file. That's super helpful in theory, but what if the user goes poking around the file system and, one day randomly, and they encounter a QuickBooks backup? Well, what is this? Let me open it and see what this is. Would you like to restore your QuickBooks backup? Okay, I don't know. Sure. Well, I'm just trying to see what this is. Fine. And, now it opens the restored file. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm not sure what I'm in the middle of. I'm going to quit QuickBooks and I'm going to go back to what I was doing. Fast forward a week later, you open QuickBooks. Now you've got this restored backup QuickBooks. That's the last company file that you opened. So helpfully Intuit says, you probably want to resume doing that. I mean, ideally what they would learn from is, decades of actual user experience, where how many support calls have they got about this? Maybe what they do is they say, hey, for 15 years, you've been using this company file. Last week, you opened this other random, off the wall copy of QuickBooks that you probably don't want. Would you like to go back to the one that that you're probably supposed to like? I mean, like if you want to get really clever, there's probably a way that they could do that, but I mean, I also advise software developers not to try to be too clever, because then they get into these even crazier, edge cases. So it's not an easy problem. Fundamentally, it's about exposing the data store to the user or not. You could store those QuickBooks files in application support or somewhere the user is not going to even really have access to it. But then you need some kind of built-in mechanism for like importing and exporting files and like managing, company files basically. So you're back to the same problem potentially. So I don't know. It's about informing the user and giving them a choice and trying to really help them do the right thing, I think.
Well, I think, Mike Kingsley in the chat talks about it too. Just in general, having PC stuff to deal with, but also phone support for PC stuff is just
Yeah.
double whammy against you. It's a really crappy day to start with, and then you had to spend hours dealing with that. So that's difficult. I do have a question though in regards to that. And this just could be my lack of knowledge in the area. Is there a reason why they wouldn't use something like QuickBooks Online for their purposes?
Great question.
It is a great question for certain companies that have a lot of line items for invoicing. There's not parity with the online version. So for wholesale manufacturers and people who do some types of subcontracting, some of these customized templates that QuickBooks has are much better tailored for their business. So that's
sense.
the problem, is that the online version is not quite the same.
Yeah, I get it. QuickBooks is somewhat of a hassle locally from what I recall. I do have a client that does want to shift over because they have a local copy of QuickBooks and they want to shift over to online. But I did mention briefly to them that there is some lack of parity. It is also depending on the industry, right? Like,
that's right.
So there's a little bit there. So I said, listen, I'm not the expert. Here's someone I know that's a QuickBooks expert. Talk to them, because I would give you a crappy answer if I did.
Right.
But
the other thing I was thinking was, if they had used a hosted version of QuickBooks, they probably would have run into the same problem, because all that, that whatever they had to roll back to months ago when they initially caused this issue and started working out of a temporary folder from a recovered version, that still would have happened even if it was hosted in the cloud. Not the online version of QuickBooks like you're talking about, Sam, but what is it? Right. The
Networks,
company,
yeah.
Right Networks, that hosts QuickBooks in the cloud.
Right.
Yeah, you can get into the same kind of trouble with them, because it's just basically running Windows. But yeah, the online version, I take the extra steps to really try to convince them in some cases. I've had one case where they tried it and they ended up just going back to the standalone version. So I felt like I maybe pushed a little too much. But the pros are really significant, like not having to deal with any of this crap. Which file is it? Which machine? What are is it a firewall issue? User management, all that stuff. It's all just built into QuickBooks, and you can do it from anywhere. So you don't need to worry about VPNs or, screen sharing or whatever else. So there's a lot of reasons to use it. And so maybe depending on the industry, to your point, I get a little bit more, strong in my encouragement there, because it eliminates so much of this overhead of dealing with, potential QuickBooks issues. And, maybe it's a cost thing. It's not cheap. I mean, I think the desktop version has gone up quite a bit as well, but, QuickBooks Online has gone up because now they just have this captive audience where, what are you going to do? Switch, So it feels really like extortionary. Is that a word? Yeah. And so, but it's still like, if you don't go for QuickBooks Online and you just keep QuickBooks Desktop, and then they end up having to pay for they have maintenance cost of your time for 4 hours dealing with something like this every once in a while, kind of all washes out. Yeah. Well, so you took 4 hours and you charged. So anyone have any guesses? Yeah.
All right. So hang on. So it was 2.5, like 3 hours on site on Friday to start to onboard the machine. Oh, he's looking for this client was looking for a PC that would be, with an SSD, and he kind of like knows what to look for, an i9 Intel processor, that sort of thing. Every single PC that he could find down the line, all shipped with the Windows Home. So the only way you can get it to Pro is pay the extra $100 when you get home and upgrade directly from Microsoft. And I shopped that out on Slack, and somebody gave me the URL of a company that was selling licenses, and it was supposedly bona fide. Other people said, "Oh yeah, I've used them. I bought a license for $25 instead of $99, and it didn't work. It took the license, but then it couldn't validate." But then, and this is kind of going a little bit off the grid, if you look hard enough, you can find Windows 11 Pro validation scripts for free online, and you just run that from terminal and you don't have to pay anything. So So there's all kinds of stuff you could do. But so then, and then the other thing, add insult to injury with these PCs is that to get past the startup screen where it's telling you how wonderful it is, it wants you to sign up for a free Outlook account or sign in with your own account.
Yeah, Windows Live account or something.
Yeah. You have to jump through hoops of fire just to create a local user and the client keeps on getting on his client workstations these nag screens that say, hey, why don't you sign up? Your life would be so much better. So it's just awful. It's just awful. And it's shipped with McAfee. So, it takes time to extricate that. So anyway, so I was spending time with that, a couple hours on Sunday. I spent time on Saturday trying to log in. So it was like an aggregate total of 10 hours. How many hours did Jerry charge the client?
Oh my God.
Here it comes.
Do we have to guess?
But we don't spend too much time.
I'm going with 3.5.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
you're very
3.
close. Yeah, 4. I did 4.
Okay.
4 at
Right.
a discounted rate.
Oh man!
Wait, a discounted rate because they just have a discounted rate, or you also just gave them voluntarily?
Okay. You didn't discount the. Okay.
No. And I'm doing a little free work for him on the side that I'm not going to bill him for.
Killing me. I love the honesty though. I do.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of, what do they call those in the mall? The anchor. I don't have a lot of anchor stores. This guy's one of my anchor stores, so I can't beat up on him too hard. But it's a real challenge.
Sounds like
Windows is a nightmare in general. I feel really lucky. I haven't really had to deal with too much Windows in the last several years, really. Yeah.
Some of it is also because we just don't know it that well. Like I'm sure there are better, we can be better at it and get around some of those nuances, but we just don't know it that well. So we're all fumbling around. Even I would do the same thing, Jerry. I would be fumbling through the setup screen because maybe Matt on my team knows it well, but I certainly don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, like the Windows Live thing. I mean, we have our own version of that with iCloud. I mean, everybody thinks Apple is forcing them into iCloud, and there's a little button that says, not now or set up later or whatever. They don't let you say not now or I don't want iCloud. They make you say set up later. We'll get to you eventually. We'll get you to sign in eventually. Set up later. No, that's not what I mean. I don't mean set up later. I mean set up never. Do you have that option? No, they assume worst case is you'll do it later. You're definitely going to do it though at some point. Yeah, I'm sure it's similar on Windows, but well, I got a little something. So a couple of follow-up things. And this was from a Patreon show, I think. And there was also something from that show I wanted to follow up with Sam about, but we need to wait for, I think, a Patreon episode for that. But one thing we talked about was my client who lost access to their 2FA app. And then the admin account was able to reset the end user's 2FA on their device. So I had this happen at a totally different client, very similar scenario where an end user, needed to have their 1Password signed in. They didn't have the 2FA. We needed an admin. The client owner of the main point of contact, the owner of the client was the admin, was the only admin on the 1Password account. And of course we had a ticket open for a year where we were following up with them saying, hey, we're pretty sure your 2FA, you don't have access to it. You're signed in on several devices, but we're just worried that this is going to come up at some point where you can't sign in. So we're trying to get ahead of this, right? This email back and forth. Oh, can you do this day? No. Okay. Try this day. Call gets rescheduled. Call gets canceled. Eventually we have it open, but they just never committed to just being available to actually go through this resetting up of 2FA. So fast forward to the time when we actually need it. And the owner of the company comes back and says, I'm being told that I need to sign in using my 2FA on 1Password and it's not working. So we check. She has 2 iMacs. I forget if I think she has a laptop as well. She has an iPad, an iPhone. So we go into 1Password on all these various devices. None of them have 2FA. It's asking for 2FA on all of them. With the one exception being, I think it was her iPhone in the 1Password 7 app. So if you have 1Password, a current version that has already jumped through the hoop of 2FA, you can go into your settings on that app on that device, and you can turn off multi-factor authentication, turn off 2FA on all of your devices, or on your account. And then this way you can re-enroll in 2FA. But that's not an option in the 1Password 7 app. So even though 1Password 7 was fully authenticated with 2FA, there's no option in that app to actually turn off 2FA after you're, already signed in. And that was the only device where she was signed in fully. So we needed to work with 1Password support. So I thought I'd bring this to the attention of our listeners. If this comes up where, like in that case, I described it was a lot of hassle, but we got through it on our own because the user did have a device that was already authenticated and we were able to use that device to turn off 2FA. In this case, we didn't have that luxury, so we had to go through 1Password support. So they ask you a bunch of questions like, when did you sign up for your account? Well, we have the record of when we set that up, based on our ticket notes. So I was able to provide that. Who, like, just basic questions like who's the admin on the account, maybe examples of some of the users. I don't remember if it asked about recent items added to the vault, certain things that in theory only the owner would know, because of course you have your login, you have your 1Password master password, you have your secret key. That's not a problem. But if somebody phished that from you or, otherwise gained that from you, they could in theory go to 1Password support and trick them, especially if they had access to your email account on file. So 1Password support has to ask you a bunch of questions to basically verify your identity. So it went pretty smoothly. We provided answers. The client basically forwarded us the email from 1Password support. We answered almost all the questions except for one or two. I said, I'm not sure what the name of your iPhone is, but here's how you can find it. What are the name of your devices, et cetera. Provide the information. They got right back to her. They just turned off 2FA. So we were able to log in now and then re-enroll 2FA and also add a second admin, of course. So that went smoothly, but it's just know that, you could get locked out essentially for a few days as you kind of gather the info and work with support and deal with that issue.
But it's good to know that you have a way in if they ask you the right questions and you have those answers. I mean, I can't imagine if you lose the secret key or master password, aren't you toast if you lose one of those?
I believe so. I believe the secret key is basically an encryption key, and so if you don't have that, I think that you're not able to, no matter what, even 1Password support can't help you, I believe. If you have your data, if you have it on a device, I think you can maybe move the stuff out into a new vault or something, but it's not just you lose everything automatically, but I think you can't continue syncing with that particular account basically.
Well, at least you got in though. That scares me sometimes, just the thought of a customer losing access to their 1Password, because there are a couple instances where we don't manage it for them. They've set it up prior to us or something like that. And and that's something you're bringing up in the chat. Go for it, Joe.
Yeah, Chris, however, in the chat says we just signed up for 1Password MSP and are moving our clients over. So Chris, if you're listening and you hear more about that, this is what I wanted to ask you. Chris just followed up. It gives us admin access to our clients without having to have a license on their account. So as I mentioned in the past, if you have I think it's called 1Password for Teams, which is their kind of entry level business plan, basically. I think you're paying, it's not expensive. I think it's $20 a month or something, and you get 10 seats. So for most of my kind of sweet spot clients, which are on the order of, let's say, 5 users, paying for that is a no-brainer for just the company organization and all that. And it gives you a free seat. So we've just used that where applicable. Otherwise, if they're on the business plan, then, we just have to strongly encourage or require them to pay for a license for us, just so that we can have access as an admin to be able to help their users or get the admin, the owner of the company out of trouble or the point of contact. But as Chris is saying, with 1Password MSP, we can have an admin account on their account without it costing them an extra license. So that's super handy.
And how does one sign up for that?
So there's on their site, because I was literally just checking it out myself. If you have a 1Password account already, they have a link to contact 1Password support, and it just goes to msp@1password.com and asks to be converted to an MSP account. And then I think at that point you have to then add your child objects below it, but it looks pretty easy actually.
So you're saying with every client that you potentially want to have a non-billable seat, you have to request?
No, I think you have to request the MSP portion to get converted. And then I'm not sure how yet you can add the clients, but it must be a fairly straightforward process, I would assume.
But we're through the, I don't know, through the fact that we're on part of the ACN program, we have these family accounts that they give us, right?
Oh, good point. Yeah. Yeah,
How
we
does that
get
work?
this special offer like
Free.
of an NFR from 1Password. I wonder if
Mhm.
it's possible to convert that over as like a test account, as part of the 1Password MSP program, or
Wait, but don't we have? I thought it was we have Teams and then we get the family account, so our Teams account can be converted,
that's
but
a
the
good
family
point. I
account's
think you're
separate, I
right.
think.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Well, that might be in your case, Sam, because I remember you talking about the difference that you differentiating between the teams and the family, but I believe I only have a family. So
Oh,
I
I think
could
for
write to them.
every, yeah,
Mhm.
check it out with your rep there or whatever. But I think that for every like Teams or business account, you get a family account. Like
yeah,
you're
I think
so that,
that's.
yeah, is that right?
I think so.
Hmm. Okay.
But yeah,
All
but
right.
they might have given you a family account when you were signing up initially or something for your
Interesting.
internal use.
So
Yeah.
speaking of 1Password and administrating other clients, so the same client that I mentioned with QuickBooks, if we're creating credentials for one of their new employees, offboarding or onboarding them, there's really no way that we can move the credentials that we create into their vault. The best we can do is share it through the sharing mechanism of an hour, a day, a week,
Hmm.
which is kind of unfortunate. I was dealing with that today where with this new employee, I just wanted to move the data to his private vault after he accepted the 1Password invitation, but there's no way to do that. All I can do is
Hmm.
create a sharing link. Have you,
Okay.
either one of you, experienced anything like that?
So you wanted to permanently just put it over in his vault, right?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted a copy of it, in
Right.
administration or admin or a folder or a vault, but at the same time move it into his private vault. You can't see the user's private vaults.
Right. Right.
Yeah, you'd have to create a shared vault, right? That either
Yeah.
they share with you or you share with them, and then that's just where they keep those logins, and then it's like a user training thing to know like
Yeah.
anything
But
you
then
want
if you have
Terry to have access to. Yeah.
right, but then if you have 25 employees, you've got 25 vaults.
Yeah, no,
Well, that
exactly.
doesn't.
I
Yeah.
don't typically
That
work that
doesn't
way for
work.
that
That
for
doesn't
that reason.
scale.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you
Wait,
want to
if you
keep.
have 25 companies, you're saying, or not 20,
No,
not per employee.
employee. Yeah. A
So
I
you
see
shared
want
what
to
you're
vault.
keep a
saying.
copy of their
Yeah.
It's a good,
passwords.
yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Like you want to keep a copy
Yeah.
of each employee's
Sure.
password?
Yeah. If we create a credential to the Synology server, we want them to have it in their private vault, and we also want to know what that is. That's our
That's a good point.
documentation.
Yeah.
No, I guess I don't do that because I'm like it's your responsibility to have it. If you lose it, I'll reset it for you. But I try to
Yeah,
purposely not keep user passwords just for in
Mhm.
case
same.
I was ever compromised or I don't know something like that. I guess is what I was thinking.
Yeah. Chris
Yeah.
is saying you could launch into the tenant, and I understand that, but still, even as the admin with your company, you can't see the vaults, the
It would
private
be nice if
vaults.
they had an item like a shared two-way sharing, like on a per item basis within a
Yeah.
vault. I think that's what you're asking for. It's like they could be in their quote employee vault, what they used to call the private vault in their own company 1Password account. Like the employee has their own, password for the server, like you said, in their private employee vault. That single item from that vault could be shared with you, and you could keep it in whatever vault you want to keep it in,
Right.
on your side, and you could have that times 20 more employees. But yeah, that's a
Right.
good point. You can't keep it
Or
hidden
even
from,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
I understand. Or even right click on you created the credential, right click on it, and it goes share a copy to, and then you put in the email address of the employee, and then boom, they've got it in there.
And it's a one-way share, yeah, which is helpful for that. Yeah, Mike is saying they can't. Mike Kingsley is saying they can't have it in their private vault. Create a gated vault for IT stuff. That's true, and that makes sense for like the company-wide things on their side,
Right.
or like something that you want their point of contact to have for everyone in the company or whatever. But there's no way to do that in this kind of model because if you have 10 different employees, each with their own private access to the server, you don't want all of those passwords to be in one vault that's shared with you, because then the employees can see each other's passwords. So it's kind of an edge case. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, because like Sam, I typically avoid saving a lot of that stuff now for, each employee, even though the client kind of wants us to have it in some cases. We say like, there's just no good way to do that, really. Even for the point of contact at the company to maintain access to all of the employees' passwords, it's manual. They have to have their copy that they keep keep up to date. And then the employee has to have their copy. And if the employee resets their password, the manager there, or the point of contact, doesn't find out about it necessarily. So that's not
synchronous.
Yeah. It's also the old way of doing it. Like a lot of times that comes up in email. Oh, well, what if this employee's out for a week and I need to look at their email, and they used to just go log in as the employee. But the right way to do that is just to delegate their inbox, so that the manager can just see it as a separate entry in their list on, an Outlook on their side, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting that we're on this 1Password topic. It's kind of related, but it's more personal to me. I had an issue with my own 1Password recently where I just had a disconnect message show up on all my devices. And, it shows up as like a red cloud icon with a line through it. And it showed up on my Mac, my 2 Mac computers, and my iPhone. And it says reconnect. And if you tap reconnect or press reconnect, nothing, like it attempts and then just goes back to saying offline. So I was digging into this. I was like, what's wrong with my account? I signed into my team's account. I signed into my family account. I could get into both. They were both fine. I ended up having to contact 1Password support, because I was like, what's going on, guys? And they asked me for verification that I could log in, which I said yes. They asked me for 1Password diagnostics, which I ended up sending them. And then it was a weird response. Like I sent them the diagnostics, and then they're like, can you verify that all your vaults, are not having issues? And I'm like, isn't that why I sent the diagnostics to you? I'm like, I'm not sure why I just did that. And they're asking me more generic questions again. But it actually did point me in a direction, though, in essence. So basically I have, as we were talking about, I have my vaults, my family vaults, and then I have some shared vaults with customers. And it turns out that one of my customers disabled their vault that was shared, just one vault. But in 1Password, it shows as just disconnected, no specifics as to what is disconnected.
That's crazy.
So I thought everything was busted on my end, and I was like, I can't get this to work, and I'm freaking out. And so I asked them, I'm like, hey guys, like I found the error, thanks, but like, why this generic disconnected message? That's not helpful at all. They're like, yeah, well, sometimes it shows up that way. Sorry. I was like, okay. I was like, thanks.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even they couldn't find it after looking through the diagnostics. So who knows? I don't know how good their logging is. But
yeah, you'd think it would be a hover. Just hover over and it would say like, "This vault is disconnected," not just "You're disconnected. Figure it out."
Basically.
Interesting. Wow.
I still have it on this computer. I left it on purpose just in case I need to do anything. So this one still shows disconnected, even though everything else works.
Wow.
Fun times.
Well, as we wrap up, I thought I would just bring some attention to a post from Armin Briegel, previous guest of the show and friend of the show, who writes Mac Admins News, celebrating 10 years of Mac Admins this May. So we're still right here in the middle or toward the end of May as we record. And congrats on 10 years of Mac Admins. Nice. I thought this was an interesting prompt. I think Armin suggested this, where showed basically how you can find your first post on the Mac Admin Slack. So if you go into the Mac Admin Slack and you search for @username, and then you switch the sort order to oldest first. So I joined Mac Admins in June, and then I was lurking for a while. And then in November of 2015 was my first post at, coincidentally, iPhone time, 9:41 a.m. So that time that's I think still in all of Apple's product marketing. And it's the time that Steve Jobs, introduced the iPhone originally. I don't know how widely known that is, but I'm pretty sure that's where they got it from. 9:41 a.m. to Jerry. And I forget what I said. I think I just said test. So that was riveting stuff. But we go way back. So when
Sam,
listeners,
he's been answering messages for me for since 941. Yeah.
Yeah, this is 941 of November 2015. Yeah, so yeah, and also while we're at it, congrats to Tom Bridge. He is now, how do you pronounce it? Chair Emeritus? Emeritus?
Emeritus, I
Emeritus?
think.
Emeritus at the Mac Admins Foundation. So
how
yeah,
about emeritus?
emeritus. There you go. My brain is still in Europe right now. So yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
You know who will love that? My wife will have such a good laugh out of that.
Play that for her. Yeah, this is me.
She's always correcting me on my grammar and what I know and what I don't know, which is I don't know much, but yeah.
Well, you got the pronunciation right. Emeritus. I still don't know. Emeritus. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's it.
I'll try to remember that. Yeah. So yeah, and then well, anyway, it's they've had a great run with the Mac Admins, all things, the nonprofit, the Slack, the podcast, the news, I think even like a software repository type stuff. So it's a great resource out there for anyone who may be new to this industry and hasn't encountered the Mac Admins Slack or any of the fine work they do. Definitely check it out. And thank you all for your hard work.
Yeah. Before we go, I know that was such a lovely way to wind up the show, Joe, but I'm going to dangle another little piece of information for everybody. So I had a client just recently upgrade to an M4. She had an M2, and this is a long-standing client, and I worked with the computer. It might have been this. So she had damage to it. Right. So before we sent it out to Depot, we got a brand new machine from the Apple store. We transferred all the data over. We sent it out for repair. It came back from repair. Then she ordered her brand new M4, and we took all the data from the repaired machine and we moved it to the M4. So now we send the repaired machine. We want to send it back to Apple for credit, right? For her new purchase. And the price was something like Apple would give her, again, it was a MacBook Air. They would give her $550, $600 for this. I could tell you guys aren't listening.
I'm listening.
I don't know. You don't look like you're listening. All right. So listen. All right. I'm almost done. So they were going to give her $600. So we send it in. I help her send it in. I bring it to FedEx for her because I'm a great guy, right? She gets a message back that they're only going to give her this paltry sum of money. And I at the time when she asked me about this, I said, well, that's really strange because, your computer doesn't look that heavily damaged. There was like very little cosmetically wrong with it. But now I'm thinking, as we're recording the show here live, that they may have found other problems on this machine that they were supposed to have repaired. So they only wanted to give her $150. So she said, send it back to me. So
wow,
I'm going to get a chance to look at it.
After an Apple Care repair, then trying to trade it in, and they're like, "We don't like this repair that was done. Who did you hire?"
They said,
like,
they gave her some sort of form message like, "Oh, there's like a 1/4-inch scratch, and this is this and this is that." But this was not a shabby looking machine. But here's my tip: I'm going to leave you with.
Yeah.
All my Macs, and I know it's great to be a real sport, not to put cases on your stuff, but every time I've sent my computer's back or my phone's back, I've always gotten full credit unless I had a cracked screen or something not working. So there's a real positive to like recommend to your clients, get the case, don't just use it without the case, because when you trade up, you're going to be, it's not, the value won't be there on potentially the machine that you trade up, because they're going to reject it for dings on it, hip checks, door checks, those sorts of things.
Hip checks.
So So what do you think about that, guys? Discuss amongst yourselves.
I still am not a fan of the case. I'll take my chances. I mean, it just adds weight. It adds bulk. It also,
got money.
I think
that's why
it reduces
traveling
the
around the
cooling
world
efficiency. It's, I don't know. I have a case on my phone. Now. I relented on that because it's better. It sits on a table better. It's, I don't know, just overall it seems like better to have a case on the phone. I really like the caseless phone. The design is just beautiful, but it's like more slippery and I don't know. anyway, that's where I'm at with this. And
Sam,
on
where
a
are you
Mac,
at?
I've seen more issues.
Case for the computer?
cases.
Heck no. I'm out
Yeah, I
for that,
agree.
man.
Oh,
Come on.
goodness gracious, guys. I got a nice clear plastic case, cost me like $23 on Amazon, and I go back and I get full credit. So I'm laughing
How
all the
much-
way to the bank.
I like
How
my
much-
Mac Commando style. Come on.
Yeah, same. How much
How-
grime is trapped in between the case and the computer? That's what I want to know. How much dust and grime?
I'm very
and
fastidious, Joe.
permanent stains.
I'm
Okay.
a regular Amoritis when it comes to
I was
this.
going to say that. Yes, or fastidious.
I clean regularly. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
I take my shower regularly.
Okay. You bring your Mac in there with you. Well,
right.
thanks everyone for listening to another fine episode of Command Control Power. Case or no case, you be the
I tried,
judge
folks.
and give us your feedback. And if you're listening live, check the description for the link to show number 2, and we'll see you there, where we talk more about, I think, more behind the scenes topics for Patreon. Thanks everyone for listening and supporting Command Control Power.